You know, we're coming up on Independence Day weekend, and we want to do more than just talk about hot dogs and hamburgers. So let's bring on former United States Army Major Harris Kligman. Good morning, and thank you for your service.
Thank you very much for the kind words. A real pleasure to be with you this morning.
Well, again, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
And when did you serve during the Vietnam War?
I was a Vietnam veteran as well. I was commissioned in 1958. I am a military intelligence officer, cross-trained as an infantry officer. Spent about 21 years reserve on active duty, and that pretty well covered it. I've been a lot of places. Vietnam, I had several trips to Cambodia and Laos, and it paralleled my civilian career, which covered 35 years of international travel to South America, Africa, and the Far East. I've lived in South Korea for 4.5 years, and I know the world pretty well, both from a military point and from a civilian point.
As an intelligence officer, what were your responsibilities?
They varied. It was all source intelligence. We did a lot of things, some of which is classified.
Still?
Wow. And although I can remember it as if it was yesterday, I'm not at liberty to talk extensively about it.
Really? Still?
Can he find the extended warranty guy?
Sir?
So you still can't talk about it?
No, I prefer not to. What I've done is that from my military background and the civilian background, as I like to tell my son Rob, as the circus would collect animals, I've collected people. I knew at some point in time I would write a book about my experiences. Fictional, of course, but I'd bring in the people I've met, and I developed a story where some of what I experienced could be told in fictional form.
Nice. Well,
and I've written 4 fictional thriller novels, 5th to be published in July, and I've encapsulated much of my military experience and my civilian experience in these stories.
Okay, so we have to kind of dig through there to get some of these stories.
Pretty much so.
I got you.
There's been experiences, for instance, in Vietnam. My time there was always as a businessman, but as a person has a left and a right side. My right side, for example, was a business side. My left side was the intelligence side. When I went to Vietnam, It was in a place called Three Corps, which was Saigon, a city at war, heavy intelligence activity there. I recall an incident that ran from about 1965 to 71, where military intelligence operatives were involved in a program called Operation Phoenix, which involved the assassination of Viet Cong throughout the country, primarily in Saigon, and it was an operation which I imagine is part of history and probably could be Googled. That is one of the things some intelligence officers did, along with the CIA and special forces, but primarily it was taken over by military intelligence, and they ran the operation through to its conclusion at about 1971. It covered about a 6-year period.
Wow.
So there are some of the things. We were at war. We were trying to win it. It was a 20-year war. The Defense Department classifies that war beginning in November 1955 and concluding in April 1975. 20 years is a long time. A lot of people served there. A lot of people visited there on various assignments. It was always a hotbed of intelligence activity, not only from our side, but from Russia, from Czechoslovakia, from other agents who were operating in South Vietnam as business people, as reporters, as publishers of this magazine or that magazine. It was a constant hotbed for intelligence.
I don't want to simplify what you did, but it was kind of like a James Bond role. You know, you're going in.
It's
Right?
It's indeed that, and then some.
Wow.
It was an interesting thing. There was I just recall a CIA-run hotel called the Duck, spelled D-U-C. And you could get a pretty good hamburger there as long as you ate it quickly because it seemed to have grown legs and would move off the plate. But that kind of humor
it doesn't sound cooked.
Cockroaches.
and of course, CIA was easily identified, unfortunately, because they like to drive Pintos, if you can remember that car way back when.
Why would they, that doesn't sound like, if you work for a bureau that's called the Central Intelligence Agency, why would you drive a Pinto?
There you go.
Yes,
I often ask that question, and many, many more. The complexities of the situation gone amok, I guess. It was a interesting city, Saigon, beautifully proportioned. The French operated it as a colony for 125 years. Beautiful boulevards, palm trees, various buildings. But when we finished there, the beautiful boulevards, the beautiful restaurants, everything was, of course, asunder. A city at war is a terrible place to be. And I try to bring this all in my books in various forms through the people that I've interacted with, both in the military and the civilian capacity. Everybody has a story to tell. We all have a book in our head. I have many because of what I did and where I did it. And I kind of get what you've asked me about out in these books. And if one would read it, they would see a number of things.
You know what I would do, Major? Because your stories have to be told. There has to be some place, maybe you don't publish it now, maybe later,
right,
but there should be an accounting of everything you can remember in order, because it's an amazing story. And I believe that's a Clint Eastwood type movie.
Oh, yeah.
No? Let me ask you something about Vietnam. Was there any time where your mission was to find people like John McCain and prisoners of war? John McCain was a high-profile prisoner at the time because his dad was a high-ranking naval official, so it wasn't like, the government wanted him.
Yes.
Absolutely. There was one attempt, and it was all volunteer by anybody that wanted to do it, special forces, etc., where they dropped behind enemy lines. I can't recall the year, but when they reached the prison camp where the information was that a number of prisoners were being held, they had been moved. And that was the only attempt to try to rescue prisoners that I know of in North Vietnam. South Vietnam was pretty well controlled in certain areas by the VC and the NVA. And it was a constant battle to try to close down what was called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which came in from Laos and Cambodia and moved tons of supplies into the south. And there was never a place, whether it was a Delta area, which was termed 4 Corps, or all the way up to the Parallel, which was 1 Corps, that there was an activity going on every single day. People think, well, Saigon was a capital city, nothing ever happened there. You would have a motorcycle with 2 people, the driver and the passenger. They'd go past the restaurant, take a hand grenade, throw it through the window of the restaurant. After a while, you would see every restaurant, bar, etc., in Saigon that had chicken wire in there, so when they threw the hand grenade, it would bounce off and go back into the street. It was an actual city at war that never, ever stopped.
I just think of it, and people think of Good Morning Vietnam as a comedy, but there's some there's some reality in that.
Yes,
that just is. What you said reminded me of a part of that movie.
Oh, absolutely. There is some humor in it. I remember on one occasion where the United States government took over an 8 or 9 story building. It took over many buildings in Saigon, and on the top of this building was a roof garden strung with Chinese lanterns, tables with tablecloths and silverware, mostly for embassy personnel. There was some military there. In one corner of the roof garden was a country western band. Off in a distance, 5 or so miles, you would see the helicopter their gunships, shooting bullets into the Viet Cong or NVA. And then you would look at your plate and see a beautiful steak probably flown in from Japan. So when you got tired of looking at the war 5 miles away, you would listen to the country western music. Then you would eat your steak, and it was all in one word, surreal.
I was going to say surreal.
Different world, yeah.
Surreal.
But that actually happened. I have never forgotten it. When I came home and my dad asked me on one occasion, can you describe what you've witnessed? And I mentioned that. He looked at me like, are you really, is this real? Absolutely. These are the humorous things that may come out of a city at war or country at war. But it was a terrible place. You come back both physically and mentally changed, as you do in any military service. Men and women that served there, not only in the embassy, in the intelligence areas, whether it's a military attache's office at the embassy, CIA, or the grunt on the front line, you are changed forever. And 20 years, as I said before, and not to repeat myself, but is an extremely long time to be at war.
We're talking to retired United States Army Major Harris Kligman. He's got a number of books out. We're linked to all of them on the radio station website. Back then, Major, what was the high-tech gadget you guys had?
As far as?
Yeah, just, I don't know, something that you thought, wow, this is really cool.
Futuristic.
Like, this feels futuristic.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. High-tech...
Satellite phone?
We didn't have really GPS in those days, as my wife used and still tells me. You can't find your way around Stanford to get to the railroad station yet. But if I had a map and a compass, I could get you through a jungle.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
No doubt.
Yeah.
This is much better.
Very much better.
Yeah.
Very much better.
See, I go with you anytime.
No, I found that, guys, that there are so many experiences that, at least in my lifetime, that I've been fortunate enough to have that I just felt that I could do a interesting plot, storyline, characters by bringing it out in a fictional way, still protecting certain things and people that I feel that I have to protect, changing their names, and yet get the reader interested to understand what would happen in a military intelligence background. One of my books, for example, is to be published in July. It's called Life Impossible, and it involves a dedicated jihadist from the Gaza Strip and several Mossad agents in Israel who I came across. And I thought I'd try to explain to the reader some of the differences and some of the motivations that make these people what they are and why this conflict goes on for so long. The same thing in Vietnam. That country was always at war. If it wasn't the Chinese, it was the French for 125 years, then the Japanese during World War II, and then we during the Vietnam War. It's a complex situation. The average person, Chaz, never really experienced war or served in the military, and that's about it. So please, if you have any questions that I can answer, I'll certainly try.
Yeah, I'm going to take a quick break. I want to talk to you about this this thing that a priest said right before jumping out of an airplane.
Okay, sure.
All right. Retired U.S. Army Major Harris Kligman on, and even just over the phone, being near this man makes me feel like a better person. Thank you again for your service.
Thanks for the kind words, Chaz. Thank you.
We're linked up to all your books at WPLR.com and 95.9thefox.com. Now, what about this priest and on an airplane?
Yeah, well, I was making a parachute jump along with a number of other troopers, and there are and have been a number of chaplains who jump and go through the airborne school and get their wings and are assigned to various units such as the 2nd Airborne Division. Anyway, we were making a parachute jump, and there was a priest on board, airborne qualified, and as we were nearing the drop zone, The priest called out, "Hey, boys, how many of you are going to church this Sunday?" Well, obviously, among 20, 25, 30 troopers ready to exit the plane, there are a few non-believers and non-Christian people on board, but every single trooper raised their hand that they were going to church this Sunday. There is no such thing as not being religious when you're jumping out of a plane 1,250 feet above the ground.
Wow, what a great way to recruit people. I'll see you all Sunday, boys.
He should have yelled, "I'm not," and then jumped out.
Before we let you go, what should we be thinking about or have in mind over the Independence Day weekend?
Yeah, interesting. When a man or a woman signs up for military service, what they basically do is write a blank check. And that blank check means that I'm willing to sacrifice my life for my country. When you think of Independence Day and all the men and women from the 1776 period through to where we are now in Afghanistan that have been wounded both mentally and physically, who have lost their lives so that we Americans can breathe free air for a little bit longer, I think that's what the Independence Day stands for. We are free people where we can interact with each other, where we're independent of whether it's creed, color, race, opinions. We are Americans, all Americans who love to breathe free air. That's what Independence Day means to me.
Well, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, and you have a great day. Like Clint Eastwood said in Dirty Harry, the picture, you've made my day, and I really appreciate being with you. Thank you.
You made my day. Thank you.